walk very liberally on social media because I've lived long enough and I've been an activist long enough to know that everybody has feelings. And this may seem obvious, but people are nuanced in the way that society and its problems are nuanced. Unfortunately, social media is where nuance goes to die, so dying with it is any chance of converting people to a different side. And before anybody gets on my case about how the other side is full of deliberately bad actors or anything, I've lived this. In middle school, I was a violent misogynist. There's no other word for it. I stood outside Planned Parenthoods, whether they performed abortions or not, to slut shame the people going inside. If anyone brought children in, I would tell those kids that their parents were evil and they were going to kill them. I stood up next to people who threatened the lives of the staff and genuinely believed that if those doctors were dead, then the world would be better. And now I consistently vote and campaign for greater access to birth control and abortion. So let's rewind. Back when Justin Bieber's song Baby was released, I was, for the first time in my life, finishing the school year in the same campus that I started at. It was really weird knowing that I was gonna see these same people again. And even though middle school graduation was just a year away, this was also my first opportunity to stay friends with people through burgeoning social media sites. I stayed in contact with a couple of people throughout the years in things like Harry Potter and Twilight fan sites, that have slowly disappeared as the web consolidates into fewer and fewer centralized places, so more and more people have less and less control over what they see. But I didn't consistently maintain relationships with people in person outside of my family members. I think the last time I talked to anyone who knew me when I was 13 was when I was 13. And unfortunately, when you're used to being alone and forgotten, you tend to latch on to anyone you see as a peer who shows you attention. I remember excitedly signing up for Facebook when I was 13 as a birthday present because I wasn't allowed to do that as a preteen, and seeing on my family computer that one of those peers had liked a page that said something along the lines of 1,000 likes and Facebook will change Justin Bieber's gender into girl or something like that. And because I liked it, I liked it too. And I made jokes about it all the time because the people I hung out with thought that calling any guy who didn't act a specific way a girl was hilarious. And making them laugh felt like a good thing instead of a giant red flag for the way they saw girls as lesser. I didn't know words like transphobia or misogyny at the time. I was aiming for a good grade in friendship, something both possible to do and reasonable to want. And boy, did it look like I was gonna get a good grade because these girls encouraged me to pursue things that I'd always been afraid to do before. The flute and piano went from things I begrudgingly did to please my parents to ways I could bond with my new friends. I started singing. I even won some competitions. I joined a writing club. I published some poems in the school newspaper. And at each step, these girls were there to congratulate me and celebrate with me. If I ever had questions or I felt discouraged, I knew I could ask one of them and they'd do their best to help. They'd even check up on me randomly sometimes, and as a person who couldn't converse about the pop culture topic of the day, unless it was really, really big, and who wasn't familiar with the local fashion or tech scene because I was so used to it changing in a few months when I did inevitably move, this completely blew my mind. They were just such a fountain of positive feelings that I wanted to be around them all the time, including to reproductive health clinics to harass women. And it'd be easy to say that those girls led me down to the path of misogyny, that those girls primed me to be a transphobe by creating an atmosphere where trans people were a joke, where women existed to raise babies, and then say I would never have done any of the awful things I did if I weren't desperate for their approval. But I don't know if that's true because I wanted to be a good person, and those girls were clearly good people because they were good to me. And being a good person to those girls meant genuinely believing that I was saving babies from evil women, that an evil woman was anyone who didn't act exactly like us. And this went on for years, and it probably wouldn't have ever stopped if I hadn't been violently forced to see it from someone else's perspective. I'm not going to get into what happened, unless it's one-on-one and I can see her face. You can probably guess, but it made me immediately and precipitously fall out of these girls' favor. So I had two options. I could deny what happened, or lose my entire social circle again. And this time, while they're still around and casting aspersions on me now that I'm not with them. And what's weird is the thing that made me so desperate to gain their favor in the first place was why I was able to reject them so easily. I knew there were other people I could fill my life with, and like I mentioned earlier, I unfortunately filled my life with people who were bigoted in a different way, and it'd be easy to say that if the transphobes hadn't swooped in to take advantage of the anti-abortion brigade abandoning me, that I wouldn't have spent years being transphobic. Or I could say that 2010 America just thought people changing their gender was hilarious, or that the culture of the place I lived in considered pregnant people to be little more than incubators. But nothing 25-year-old me says would unsay the transphobic crap that teenage me openly and loudly said. Just like how volunteering as a clinic escort in the present doesn't undo the times where I was one of the people in the past who necessitated the existence of clinic escorts. And I'm not saying any of this to make people feel sorry for me. I'm not saying any of it as an apology, because I don't think an apology can be sincere if it's public. I don't even think it should count as an apology if I'm not saying it directly to the person in front of me, or I guess in these times, one-on-one through video chat. I'm saying it because I think the phrase "let people change" is looked down upon in activist circles because it has a lot of nuance in it, and social media is where nuance goes to die. I stood outside reproductive health clinics and I accused anyone who looked pregnant of horrible crimes to intimidate them. And I think that's why I can so easily shrug off accusations of being a bigot for the movies I watch, or the books I read, or the video games I play. Like, I wasn't reading books or watching movies back then because I was too busy following people who were probably having the worst day of their lives, specifically to psychologically break them down, and I thought I was the good guy. If I hadn't gotten myself out of that atmosphere by surrounding myself with people who created a different one, I'd probably still be doing that today. You know, the only reason I got out was because I was forgiven. I called people whores. I ripped children out of their parents' arms and lied to them about how their mom was going to chop them up. And I never personally threatened to track doctors down to blow up their houses, but I stood beside the people who did, and I never said anything. And somehow those people still let me in. Not everyone, of course. I still got some cold looks, but nobody said the people who didn't ignore me were traitors or somehow just as bad as the girls who were still protesting outside. And I understand where the fear that I'm still a violent misogynist comes from. I traumatized people. There are people who will always have to live with the scars of what I did to them and what I never even considered trying to stop other people from doing. And I even understand the people who abandoned me after one of those women came up and asked that they stop hanging around me, because I wasn't safe for those women. You know, not everyone in my situation are going to change their minds the way that I did, the way that I chose to do. You know, even when I was changing my mind as I was unlearning misogyny, I was unlearning it in a pretty bad way, but that should be its own essay. Anyway, if no one had accepted me, if nobody had let me in and held my hand and wiped away my tears and believed that I could be a good person, that I could change, I'm not sure if I ever actually would have. Because if you don't feel like you can change, if you don't feel like the way to be a good person lies down one path, are you going to go down that path? In order for someone's mindset to change, you have to feel accepted by people who share that same mindset. And I'm not saying that the dozens of women I screamed at, I swore at, and that I harassed have a duty to surround me or to change me. And at the time I did all those awful things, they couldn't have. It's not fair, even afterwards, to put that burden on them. There were just thankfully other people to surround me and show me the difference between love and love bombing. But I'm afraid that if I ask for help now, if I asked for help on social media, or if I admitted my harassment was more recent, or that they happened after I was an adult, I'm not sure if I would have been met with anything but vitriol. And like I said, that vitriol would come from anger, I understand, but it would be contrasted to the support that I'd had and from people that I already had an emotional connection with, who they heaped it on me until the decisive moment. That sentence got away from me. If I didn't think that there were pro-choice people out there I could be friends with who could believe in me, I'm not sure I wouldn't have eventually gone back to the girl who I thought did believe in me and pretended like I regretted my decision. And sure, I was 14 at the time, but even as an adult, I'm still changing in the direction of where I think people are trying to do good. So try to do good. You don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to change every mind. I don't. Like I said, I block very liberally on social media because I'm not interested in changing people's minds unless they look like they're already open to having it changed. But I also block people who treat everyone who believes in different things like trash, or believes in guilt by association, even if that association is trying to get someone else on our side. I understand where they're coming from, and I wish them the best in getting over the people who hurt them, but it's not productive to act like that. And right now, I'm more focused on what's productive. And just so it's on record, abortion is healthcare, and fuck purity culture.